Delivering IBM Cognos Analytics and IBM Planning Analytics, formerly known as TM1, dashboards that executives crave. Hi, I'm Heather Cole with Lodestar Solutions, and this presentation was originally given at Think 2019. Unfortunately, the sound quality of the recording at the live event was not so great, so I'm going to go ahead today and record it. You won't have all the interactions, but you'll definitely have the content. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Heather Cole, an analytic advisor and high-performance coach at Lodestar Solutions. I work with executives as well as their teams on how they can deliver really effective solutions and gain more respect. Today, I'm going to share with you the secret that I've learned the hard way on how to deliver dashboards that your executives will be so excited about and they're going to love working with you. Today, you will discover the secrets to dashboards that executives crave, how to connect with executives and users, effective techniques for identifying and prioritizing dashboards, design principles to tell a story, and how to build the ROI to get more funding and resources for your project. What I'm going to share with you is part of our larger program that we call Destination Dashboard or Business Intelligence Success. We kind of have renamed it over the years. And we had clients that came to one of our workshops, and in one of those, a client defined a single dashboard that was forecasted to make the company $1.2 million in annual recurring revenue. Imagine how you would feel identifying a dashboard that you knew would have this much impact to the organization. Now, in this case, it was going to deliver information their sales teams did not have access to in a timely basis. What was happening is there was information that they wanted, but they were only getting it quarterly, and by then it was too late to respond to the information. And with our program of this process, they were able to identify how they could get the data, get it out to their end users, and make them successful in a very short period of time. Now, everyone that was associated with this project actually got promoted. So this is what I want for you as well, is I want you to have this type of success story. So I'm going to give you a kind of high-level overview of our framework, and just know there's more details to learn, but you're definitely going to learn something you can implement today to make you more successful. I'm going to give you strategies, shortcuts, and ideas today that you can use right away so you are the brightest star. And for those of you that stay with me the whole time, at the end, I'm going to give you an address to go to where if you just give us your contact information, we will give you a free gift. You're going to get a free copy of my best-selling book that is on Amazon called Business Intelligence Bullseye. It kind of gives a nice parable of how this process works and how it's worked with many of our clients. And also, we're going to add some other free bonuses in there to help you be successful. So my story. I literally started in software when I was a teenager because my parents owned a software company. Yes, I was one of those freak nerd kids, right? That had the quote portable computer. I don't know if anybody remembers this. Many of you might be too young, but it was a compact computer that was the size of kind of a very large sewing machine, and it had this little keyboard that folded down and a little square, tiny little green screen monitor built into it. My dad's like, "This is your portable computer." It weighed like, I don't know, 40 pounds. So it wasn't exactly portable, but you know, that's what I grew up in. When I was 16, what every girl wants for their 16th birthday, my dad gave me books on programming in Turbo Pascal, not the sports car. Some of you may be laughing because you may be there right with me. You had your Commodore, right? But so I started in software very young. But what I realized is that there is an art form to delivering what people really want when you're trying to figure out their requirements. And I learned this the hard way. And because I would do this thing where I'd assume I knew what people want, like I knew what their job was, I knew what information that they'd want to see. And so I just filled in the blanks and then just assumed that was how I'd want to see it is how they'd want to see it. And what I discovered the truth to be is my brain does not work like everybody else's, and nor does yours. In fact, we do something in our class where we prove that you could have a room full of highly analytical people and all somewhat wired the same, and they don't even think alike. But what I discovered is if I instead asked the question of what people wanted, I was a lot more successful. Think about it. Like, have you ever gone to go buy a new car and you go to the car dealership? One day I did this and I go to the car dealership. Now understand, I live in Florida and Colorado. In Colorado, I like to off-road. I like going in the mountains, going backcountry. And, this girl who was trying to sell me her SUV was like, well, this car has this 4-wheel drive, blah, 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 but you'd never need that in Florida. She never bothered to ask if I was going to take this car out of Florida. Then she proceeded to tell me how it had heated seats, but I wouldn't need that either. And I'm like, I don't know about you, but I go to Chicago all the time. And I have family from there. And in the wintertime, in the mountains, I like a warm bum, right? So I want a heated seat. So don't be that person. Instead, I want you to start to ask the questions. And we're going to teach you how today. So what is your story? How are you going to present yourself? Are you going to fill in the dots? Are you going to be that active listener, that active observer that really understands what the executives really want? Myth number 1, I know what they want and need. This was my first problem when I started in software, is I thought I knew everything. And, let's be honest, a lot of times I do know the answers, but if I ask instead, they feel like it's their answers. Think about it. If instead of me telling someone how to do something, they tell me, they think that idea is brilliant. So stop using your crystal ball and guessing at what they want. And by the way, here's a thing that I always tell people is what they think they want, they're going to change their mind anyway. So stop trying to assume what they want because they don't even know. The next myth is I don't have time. A lot of people are like, oh, they want this dashboard right away. I don't have time to meet with them, or that they don't have time to meet with you, right? When an executive says, I don't have time to meet with you, what are they really saying? They're saying, I don't think you add enough value to my life to put you on my agenda. Now, how does that make you feel? Pretty bad, right? So what you need to do is show up and show tons of value. So they're like, gosh, I couldn't imagine not meeting with Chris. So if they don't have time, you need to show them why they need to make time and what value you're going to bring. Myth number 3, they won't meet with me. So maybe you're saying that they won't meet with you. Here's the reality, really. Not only do they either think you don't add enough value, there's another factor in here. And that is, this is the big truth. You ready for this? You make them feel stupid. Think about that. You make executives feel inferior. If you're watching this video, I already know you're one of the top in your peer group because you're a lifelong learner. You're trying to get ahead. You're trying to learn new things. That already tells me a lot about you. But I also know you're probably very intelligent. And you probably understand technology pretty well because you're a lifelong learner. And here's the secret. Executives today oftentimes are terrified by data and analytics. They don't know what big data really is. I surveyed a group of friends recently that are all CFOs here in the Tampa Bay area, asking them how they rank their knowledge on artificial intelligence, 0 to 10, 10 being I absolutely know everything. Do you know what their average score was? It was a 2. Yes, they don't know what it is. They know how to spell it, and that's about it. So what happens is when you meet with them, they feel stupid. Do you think they're going to want to meet with you? Probably not. So here's how you guys are going to address this. You are going to be the people that executives love to meet with because you teach them something without them feeling stupid. Now, for some of you, this is going to be a challenge because you do this little eye roll thing. Like, you don't realize you do it. You're going to have to watch your body language. And this is where maybe even recording yourself would be advisable. But you want to make certain that you're making it very easy for them. What would you like? Would you like more interesting projects? Increased respect from the executives and other team members? How about more time? More time, get you home on time so you can see your kids or your family, or maybe more time to do interesting projects. Do you want your users to love your work, your dashboards that you create? Maybe you'd like a promotion. So, true story, I had a client who they were struggling. So they had a team that was in charge of designing BI reports and dashboards. And then they had the CFO. The CFO, I could sense, was a little frustrated. And so I went and met with him. And I sat down and I said, I'm getting the sense that you're a little frustrated. And he's like, yes. And I said, so I feel like you aren't getting what you thought you'd get out of your Cognos investment. He's like, exactly. He's like, for a year I've said I wanted a dashboard and I have nothing to show for it. And I said, oh, that's interesting. So help me understand, like, what are you thinking you want on the dashboard? So he starts to communicate this. Now, before this meeting, I had already met with the BI team. And I said, what do you think that the CFO might complain about? And they're like, I don't know. We've given him everything he wants. And I said, well, how about dashboards? Does he have an executive dashboard? And they're like, oh my gosh, we've done like 6 flavors of it. He never uses it. So I already know that the BI team has delivered something. So I sit down with the CFO and I said, so did it ever occur to you that maybe there's just a communication disconnect, that maybe we're closer to success with your investment than you think? And he's like, what do you mean? I said, well, I have this feeling, I don't know for sure, but I have this feeling that the BI team may have designed some things, but maybe there's a disconnect in how you want it presented. So if I can get them to free up some time to meet with you, would you be able to carve out 1 hour of time where we have you draw what you want on your dashboard? Like literally pen and paper, draw it out. And he's like, well, absolutely. If I could get it, how fast could I get it then? I said, well, it depends on the data and what you're asking of it, but we think we could turn it pretty fast. So we end up, fast forward, we have this meeting. He draws out with markers what he wants. And believe it or not, most of the components that he drew, they already had. They just didn't put it together the way he wanted to. So when they delivered the dashboard a couple weeks later that had everything he wanted on, he was amazed and they looked awesome because they turned it so fast, right? So it was just a communication gap on what the executive really wanted. This happens time and time again, and I don't want it to happen to you. So it's time to try something different. If you've been doing the same thing and you're not getting the results you want, it's time to shake it up a little bit, right? And I'm going to teach you today how you can do something slightly different and get much better results. The first question I have for you is, what are the strategic goals of your company? Think about it. If you're delivering dashboards, your job is to provide data and information to the executives, to the different functional areas, to help the corporation or organization meet or exceed their strategic goals, right? I mean, every company has them. Well, not always. What I've actually learned is that some companies really don't know their strategic goals, and this is an opportunity for them to define it. But let's say your company has them, like many do. If you don't know what they are, how are you to provide reporting to meet those goals? Now, don't feel bad. I survey every group that I do, and less than 4% of BI professionals can answer this question. And in fact, when I did this session live, very few hands went up. So your homework is to go back to your organizations and ask what are the strategic goals of the company? And it's simple. You say, you know what? My job is to deliver information in dashboards and reports, and I want to make sure that I'm aligning it with our goals. What are our goals? And the executive that you talk to will look at you and be like, oh my gosh, I don't know who this person is, but I want them on my team. Now, another thing that I hear are that the executives aren't engaged. Like, Heather, they won't give me the time. And here's the reality is, right? They don't understand analytics. I actually think there's a generational gap here. Think about the typical executive, what, late 50s, 60s maybe, in most organizations. And when was the last time they took an analytics or statistics class? Over 30 years ago. And yet we expect them to completely understand all this. So what we have to do is reframe those expectations and realize that executives aren't engaged because they feel stupid. And your job is to make it so they don't feel stupid. A lot of executives think that business intelligence and data and analytics is a money pit because they have invested a lot of money and maybe they don't have what they need. And so what you need to do is we need to create quick wins. A quick win is identifying something that will make or save the company money. And I like to go for significant amounts of money. You also want to understand that executives think the funding equals support on a project. And by far that is not the case. Okay. That instead we want them engaged. You have to ask for the executive's active engagement, not just support and funding. But they don't know what that means. So you have to explain to them, I need you to communicate the strategic goals of the company so that I can provide you with the information in a really easy to use format so that you can make better decisions. A lot of times executives don't see how it increases business valuation or EBITDA, which is a financial term for those of you. Basically, it's your earnings before income tax and depreciation and amortization. So you need to go ahead and convert that into how it increases the business valuation. How does it make money? And be able to tie your dashboards for quick wins to that valuation. Have you ever delivered a dashboard and then people don't use it? You kind of feel bad, right? You're like, or you think, gosh, what's wrong with them? They're not smart enough to get it, right? Well, here's the bottom line. Only one thing ever leads to disappointment. Can you think about it, what it is? Only one thing. This is like Heather's life lesson. There's only one thing in the world that leads to disappointment. It's that expectations aren't met. That's right. Someone perceives something's going to happen and it doesn't happen. Think about the last time you were disappointed. Why was it? Was it that maybe the Starbucks was out of the syrup for your special foo-foo drink? You went there, you're craving your macchiato, whatever, and then they're like, sorry, we're out of the syrup. And you're like, what? Right? You had expectations that they'd have it and they didn't have it. So your goal is to make sure that when you deliver dashboards, you meet or exceed their expectations. And it's as simple as asking them, what are your expectations for this phase? Now, here's the next part of this. Sometimes we just can't deliver. Their expectations are too high for the time period or for the resources or for the data that we have, right? So what you want to do is you want to do what's called reframing. You want to say, well, Bob, I understand that that's what you want in this phase, but currently we don't have all the data to get you there. How about if in phase one, we provide this and you explain what is possible? Now what you've done, you've just reframed his or her expectations so they won't be disappointed. But what we find is that most people don't do this. A number one area that I see IT professionals and BI professionals do this is in deadlines. So the CFO is like, hey, I need this report. And they don't even ask when. They just, or tell when. They just kind of ask for this certain data point or report. And so what happens? We jump up like, oh, the CFO asked for it. I better do it right now. And we drop everything and we run and we start working on this. What we didn't know is they didn't need it until the board meeting 2 months from now. We never asked, right? We dropped everything. And by the way, high performance, you'll learn that the number one killer of productivity is switching tasks all the time. It just kills your productivity. So here's what you're going to do from now on. When somebody asks you for a certain report or a certain dashboard, you're going to ask their expectations. How do you want it to look? You're going to draw it out. And then what you're going to say is, when do you need it by? Is that the real date that you need it by? I have some other things that I'm working on. I just want to prioritize properly. And a lot of times they'll say, oh no, I don't need that for like a month. So make sure you ask that question. I don't know why we fail to do it, but so many of us do. And then we get stressed out. The next thing you want to do is you want to think like an executive. And a lot of executives are going to think in financial terms because that's how they're measured, right? So the first thing is you're going to think of what are the strategic goals of the organization. You don't know. You're going to do what? Yes, you're going to ask. Who are the industry leaders and how are they competing? So executives are always comparing themselves to other people in your industry. So go do your research. Uncle Google is my best friend, right? He has the answers to everything. How can we use analytics to better serve our customers? So what information could we start to look at? Now, a lot of times what you're going to find is that you're not collecting the data that you need right now, but this is how you start, is to ask the right questions. How can we drive value to the organization? So what makes or saves the company money? Again, looking at financial terms. And then what is the cost benefit? So in the example I gave earlier where the clients identified a dashboard that would make the company $1.2 million. We were estimating with the cost of software and implementation time and everything, that was going to cost them about $250,000. Now, I don't know about you, but if I had to invest $250,000 once to make within that year 1.2 million and then make 1.2 every year afterward, I would make that investment all day long. So you start to build the return on investment. In that case, where we're just shy of $1 million in the first year, and obviously 5 years out, make a lot more than that on that investment. Now, I want to introduce you to time blocking. So what we're going to do is you're going to get a bunch of sticky notes. And how you're going to get the executives to share with you their ideas is you're going to do what I call rapid requirements discovery. What we're going to do is we're going to stack of sticky notes. You call a meeting to the executives and say, hey, I want to define what's really important, how we can help deliver analytics and dashboards to exceed your needs and to help you achieve the strategic goals. I need a little bit of your time. You get them in a room and you give them each a stack of sticky notes. And you're going to set a timer. Now, the timer is designed to help us do it rapidly. And you know how you have all day Sunday to clean the house? Well, how long does it take you? All day Sunday, right? So I'm going to show you a little fun video that we put together on why you're going to use a timer, and you're going to block off maybe 10, 15 minutes. And then what you're going to do is you're going to have the executives write everything that they want the system to tell them or information that they need, every idea, one idea per sticky note. We're then going to go through it and we're going to organize them, and we'll go through that in a second. But let's go ahead and play this video, a little fun video on why time blocking is so important.
The reason the timer is so important is kind of like an analogy of cleaning your house. If you know you have all day to clean your house on Saturday, how long do you take to clean the house? All day Saturday, and maybe even Sunday too. Come on, admit it. There's been weekends where you planned to clean the whole house and you ended up sleeping on the couch, and then you ended up playing with the dog, and before you know it, it's already 5 o'clock. But if you have friends on their way over to your house and they'll be there in an hour, it is amazing how much you can get done in an hour.
Now, the next exercise is the sticky note exercise, where you, after you set the timer, is you organize them. And what we're going to do here is you're going to set the timer for, let's say, 15 minutes, and you're going to divvy out, and you're going to get in groups of maybe 2, and together the partners are going to go through all the sticky notes that they had, and then they're going to divide, they're going to delete the duplicates, and they're going to create new ones if they have them. And so they kind of condense down that list. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to prioritize these. And we're going to take all the sticky notes in the must-have, phase 1, coming out of the gate, most important, and then the should-haves, the could-haves, and the would-haves. So basically, it's a level of prioritization, right? And you want all the executives to agree on what's the most important. By them, you're just a facilitator. You're not guiding them. You're just prioritizing based on what they're telling you. So it's their baby. They own it. What you're going to find happens is that when people own it, they're much more likely to work harder at it. They're more influenced by it. They're persuaded to engage. So you want them to have active engagement, not just sponsorship. Now, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to evaluate the impact and risk. So you're going to define the various areas of opportunity that you had, and then you're going to look at the risk factors. Do you have the data? Is the business ready for change? Meaning, do they adapt to change? Does the business embrace technology? I mean, some of you have teams that are like, I hate technology, right? They usually really say that because they're afraid of it. So your job is to make them comfortable. How does the business and IT work together, right? Do you collaborate, or is there kind of a little rift there? And then what impact will there be on the organization? How will this project make or save the company money? And that's really important to think about the dollar value of the project associated to the risk and the timeline and so forth. And then also, how is this aligned to the strategic goals? If you can tie your project to the strategic goals of the CEO, you're more likely to get funding. So I'll take these and I'll put the sticky notes into kind of a grid to say, okay, low risk, high impact, we start there, right? Or if it's low risk but low reward, maybe it's not worth it. Now you want to avoid the high risk items that take a lot of time. Maybe you don't have the data, maybe the functional area is tough to work with, and not a lot of value, right? Those, just avoid it, stop wasting your time. Now when you start to look at this from this grid perspective, it becomes very clear that, well, some of us are spending time on things we shouldn't be doing. No is a very powerful word. And once you start using it, or maybe later, you will find that suddenly you have like this weight off your shoulders and you can do the cool projects. Now, when you do this brainstorming idea with your executives, you're going to go ahead and identify those risks and rewards. Make sure you set expectations with them. Set the timer, because you want to do this very rapidly. They will respect that you can get requirements discovery done in maybe even 90 minutes. If you focus, you set the timer and start on time and set those expectations. Now, here's some ideas for getting funding and increasing end user adoption. We've already talked about identify a business challenge. And maybe it's information that a particular functional area, maybe sales, is not getting on a timely basis. And then identify how that can make or save the company money. And here's a trick to this. You actually ask them, if you had this information, what do you think would be the impact on your sales number? Oh, I think it'd go up 20%. Okay, great. That's my number I'm going to use, right? And get buy-in from them. Here's another trick that I do is I'll ask the executive that's tied to this how it would impact them. And then I'd write that quote down, like verbatim, write that quote down. You know, Bob says blah, 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 blah. And I write it down. And then what I do when I'm going to present my concepts, I'll actually quote him. A lot of executives, like, they have this significance thing that they like to be important. And so I'll be like, Bob, the CFO Blob says, and I'll quote it. It also brings in this influence factor of authority where they're like, oh, shoot, like Bob said it, it must be true, right? So I'll use that quote, but I will tell them that I'm using their quote in my presentation. So you're going to do the sticky note exercise that we talked about. Now here's the trick to this is we're going to create paper mock-ups. This is really important. Stop designing and showing people dashboards in the system. So here's what happens. I call it your baby's ugly. So I have this friend that had a baby and I swear to God, it looked like a troll doll. Like it had this bright red hair that was like everywhere and these big eyes and these big hands. It looked like a troll doll. I mean, it was like cute in an ugly sort of way, right? But you wouldn't say, oh my gosh, your baby's ugly, because there's nothing they can do about it. When you design in software and you actually show your dashboard phase 1 in the software, they're not going to tell you your baby's ugly. So what you want to do is you want to draw it out. You want them to draw it out, even better yet. So have them grab the markers, start to sketch it out. Another option to do this is to print out all the different types of graphs and components that Cognos makes available and get some what we call sticky dots. You can get them at Michael's or any arts and crafts store. You know how when you buy a bottle of hand lotion and there's like a sticker on it and you peel it off and there's that gooey dot thing that's kind of nasty? That's a sticky dot. Well, you can buy those at art supplies. So what you're going to do is maybe print out. I prefer to use markers and crayons, but if you want, you could print out the different types of, bar charts and graphs and so forth that Cognos has, put the sticky dots there, and then have the executive mock up and say, well, here's the sales information by region, by state, by date, whatever it is, and have them create it. Now you have a visual diagram of what's in their head. Now all you have to do is build that, right? If you don't have the data at that point, before you even start anything, you set that expectation. Like, I'm not sure that we have that data. I'm not sure we're collecting that today, but let's explore that. So that's where you're setting that expectation. Remember, a picture is worth 1,000 words. I actually like the markers better because there's science that proves that one, color as well as drawing gets our creativity out. So it kind of wakes up that right side of our brain that some of us don't use very often. So go ahead, get them drawing. It's kind of fun too. So you're going to start with the brainstorm. You're going to do the requirements discovery with the sticky notes. You're going to remove the duplicates, and then you're going to prioritize them. Now, I'm a big believer. I believe in Agile and Scrum methodologies. I'm actually a Scrum Master. If you're not familiar with this, your homework is to go get a copy of Jeff Sutherland's book. I believe it's called Scrum, The Art of Doing Twice as Much in Half the Time, or something like that. He also has a TED Talk that you can go watch the video of. And he's the one that I actually got my certification from. I believe that if you're going to go to one of the best. So those of you in Boston, I know he gives his courses there. But what you're going to do is you're going to then create a user story. Now, a user story is quite simple. It goes, as a blank, like as a financial analyst, I need to monitor blank so that I can take blank action. And then, so you're going to ask them how they're going to use that information. I also like to tie it to what strategic goal is it tied to, and note any data sources. So I might ask the end user, where are you pulling this data today? Because a lot of times they have like data dumps they're pulling from, and I want to know where those are. And then I'll ask them, like, if you could have this information at your fingertips, what value do you put on that? So I'll put all that on a card. And then I'll also put the acceptance criteria, like, how do I know that I've delivered what you're asking for? And so I ask them to define that acceptance criteria. You're then going to organize these on a flip chart. So everything that you're going to measure, I like to do it by functional area, like sales, finance, HR, and so forth. And then you're going to place the images that you either drew or you got from Cognos that you printed out, and you're going to kind of stick them on the flip chart on images that might represent the data points that you're looking at. So you may have multiple images for a certain measure, that's fine. And then that's where you're going to use the removable glue dots or sticky dots as we call it. And then you're going to create your storyboard. Again, these can be hand-drawn, they could be printouts that you then stick on paper. Do not do this in software the first time around. You want people to be free to say your baby's ugly. And so you want them to create it. You'll create a pictorial dashboard. You're going to print pictures that, and put it on. Another tool that you can use is Snagit. That's also by TechSmith. And you can grab little pieces of images that way. For those of you that are BI professionals, a required reading book should be Cole's book on storytelling with data. It's available on Amazon. And should be required reading. It tells you all sorts of great visual cues, what makes things look good. And so kind of the 6 things are: determine the context, choose the effective visual, eliminate the clutter, focus the audience attention, think like a designer, and then tell your story. Again, required reading if you're in this profession. Then you're going to choose a visualization. So you're going to have like gross profit. You'll use simple text there. You're going to have a table if you want to do with the mixed audience. So you're comparing different regions, maybe a heat map to add visual clues to direct the audience to where they should be looking. Columns and bar charts, always really easy. Graph points are a good alternative for categorical data sets. I'm also really a stickler on 0 baselines. So when you see this non-zero baseline on the left, you can't really, it looks like the difference between these 2 data points is very large just because the visual image. And when you put the 0 baseline in there, you can see it's only like not that much, right? It's like 5%. And so that gives you a better visual representation of the variance. So make sure that you always put a 0 baseline in there. And also avoid shades of red or green. My dad's actually red-green colorblind, so I'm a little bit more conscious of this, but some people just can't see it. So be conscious of that. I had one client where the CFO he loved color. And so we had to design special charts for him that looked like Rainbow Bright Exploded. Be careful of that. I actually like companies that get maybe the marketing department in to create a theme and a color scheme around it. That makes it so that all the reporting and dashboards have a common look and feel. And that's a really great approach. So you're going to then create the picture, right? You're going to arrange the images and kind of on a flip chart, paste these little sticky dot images or draw them out on what they want on their dashboard. When an executive does this, they will own it. When you deliver it, they will love you. So a couple quick personal tips. Constantly clarify expectations to your executives because they will change their mind and they don't even know they do this. Acknowledge their busy times like month-end close, board meetings. I'm always shocked how many times people try and get on the CFO's agenda the first week of the month. By the way, they're closing their books, right? So finance is usually tied up that week. And so even end of year, end of quarter closings, remember that happens after. So just be cognizant of that. Otherwise, they just think you're kind of annoying. When meeting with the C-level, only take half the time. So I would say if I'm going to schedule a meeting, I need a half hour time. I will schedule it for an hour or 45 minutes, and then I'm going to give them the time lottery. And the reason I do that is because they're always very thankful for the coffee break between me and their next meeting. I want them to like me. One of the key components of influence and persuasion is likability. So get ahead of that, right? Add more time to their calendar. Observe how they communicate and mirror them. And this is a really good example. I had a client years ago, the CFO had ADD. Have you ever worked with an executive that like they're always distracted, their brain's going a million miles an hour, and you feel like they're never listening to you? Well, that was this client. And I know this personality really well because that's me. And so when we set up the meeting, the client had been using the planning solution for a number of years. They have a new CFO in, and they want me to come in and show him the solution that they have and explain it to him. Now, they said to me, Heather, we set the meeting for an hour, but he will not stay more than 10 minutes. And I'm like, what? And they said, since he's got here like a year ago, he has not stayed there more than 10 minutes in a meeting. So don't get like upset when he walks out. I said, wait, tell me more about him. So they started to explain to him, and I knew classic signs, right? I was like, I got this. So in my presentation, I started out and I talked really fast, and I was like faster than I normally do. And I was bouncing all over. Now, what I was doing, I was playing to his ADD. He was so comfortable with me because I was moving at warp speed that he stayed there for over an hour and, in fact, asked if we could continue having the meeting, and he was fully engaged. And when we were done, we walked out, and the person who set up the meeting looks at me and she's like, what just happened? And I said, my ADD was on par, my presentation technique was on par with his, so he was very comfortable. If I'd gone in there and talked really methodically and really slow, he would have been driven nuts. And I know I feel like that when people talk really slow to me. So think about your audience and mirror how they communicate. Record meetings in case others are not present and they need the information. And I love to underpromise and overdeliver. I love giving myself a little extra time to dot my I's and cross my T's. Typical results. When we see people following our methodology, we find that they're less stressed. They have happy executives that love their work. They gain respect. They get project funding, interesting projects, and many get promoted. So that's what I want for you. So when is now a good time to start working on this and try something new? We are building a new webinar. It's going to be building influence and dealing with senior management analytics disconnect. So why are the executive management not quite understanding analytics? So look, we're going to be adding that to the calendar here shortly. We do bring our workshops on site to you, or we can have them periodically. We do public classes. So keep an eye out for that. We'll make sure you guys get all the latest and greatest dates on that. Time for your gift. All you have to do is log on to lodestarsolutions.com/think 2019. On that, you're going to be able to fill out a little form, and it's going to sign you up to our Think group. And of course, right then you'll be able to download the best-selling book, Business Intelligence Bullseye. We'll also make sure that you get links to any of our other webinars like this one that you might be interested in. You're going to get some of our cheat sheets on how to do some of this stuff, and also updates on our latest events and schedules coming out. So you'll definitely want to join that. I'd love to hear your feedback on this. So, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the only way I get better is by you guys giving me feedback on how I can improve. So please share that with me. Like I said, we look forward to working with you guys. Our summary to success: think like an executive, get executives and end users to talk. That's 80% of the battle. Find focus and build buy-in with our rapid requirements discovery process. Underpromise, overdeliver, go low-tech before high-tech. Sticky notes, storyboards. Don't develop in a vacuum. Keep communicating with the executives and end users to get constant feedback, because they'll change their minds. So that's it for today. I've enjoyed being with you guys. Look forward to talking to all of you soon. So please reach out to me. Let's connect and have a great day.